Hi.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I think I was given a very difficult topic. I went through my presentation the first time, then I did it the second time. By the time I got to the third time, I was like, no, man, I don't want to give a lecture. I'd like to maybe tackle the topic through a series of stories based on my experience. I'm not at all suggesting that it's the only way to do it, and it's the way to do it, but I think it's one way to approach the topic. Sorry, how do I use?
The big green button.
Okay.
Do you want to go back?
Okay, now I was trying to read as well. So I thought maybe, before I get too much into the story, just to deal with some of the terminology so that my story is not too dry and not too boring. So a business model is a plan for the successful operation of a business where you try to identify the sources of revenue, the intended customer base, products, and financing. It's quite different from strategy, because strategy is about saying, okay, there's business model A, business model B, business model C. Which business model am I going to take based on my assessment of the environment that I operate in? And then the last element is the business plan. So the business plan is really about execution. It's an execution plan around that. So just to repeat, so a business model is really about saying, what is your business and how is it going to work? I heard some questions about diesel and whatnot and whatnot. I think as I tell my story, I'll get more into it. But fundamentally, and then I'll put it up front. Fundamentally, I think as black business, we must stop this thing. We are not OEMs. You must be the OEM, and that was my thinking going into business. I'm tired of the perception that black business is small. You want to provide a service for some corporate. Nah, bugger that. We must build international businesses, and that's really what I'm trying to do. So that's my story there. We're a multi-award-winning business. As the lady mentioned, we were recognized by the president last week, Thursday, for the work that we're doing. And I'll talk more about that. Fundamentally, we produce plastic pipes for the conveyance of water, as well as other industrial liquids like industrial water, gas, and so on and so forth. We also make plastic medical devices, and I'll talk about how we transitioned from one to the next as part of this conversation around standards and business models. I have not bought anybody's business, nothing. So I started my business from zero to where it is. And I'm very proud of that, because also I'm sick and tired of this thing, black business, go and find some white guy's business, acquire it, and be the chairman. I've got a problem with that fundamentally. It can happen, but I think more of us should be starting businesses from the ground up, going up. I know that's a bit of a controversial statement, but I think it's very fundamental to what we need to be doing to grow the economy. And then I've done zero government business. I've never won a single tender in my entire business career. And our business has grown quite aggressively from the onset to now. So there's the factory that we operate from. That's where we make our plastic products. It's in Germiston, Ekurhuleni. And what you have, the second picture at the bottom there, it's myself and my team at our facilities in Germiston. I'm going to give more context as I move along. And that's really the product that we make. Those are the pipes that we produce. You'll recall when we were growing up, you would see the concrete pipes in the township, where the term Malala Paipini comes from. So these pipes that we make are really to replace those concrete as well as steel pipes for the conveyance of water. And there's the various uses where the pipes can be used. And those are some of our pipes at various sites and locations in South Africa as well as in Africa in general. Okay, and then this is perhaps part of the story that I was trying to characterize. We advertise our products and services throughout the globe. We've got advertising in mainland China. We've got advertising throughout the continent of Africa. I'm still going to give more context just now. Okay, so that's where I'll spend more time. So we started off as an engineering business, providing water management solutions to mining companies. And what we saw is exactly what some of my colleagues were referring to. We were buying these pipes, valves, bolts, and whatever from other business guys, and we were installing them on mines as engineers. And as we were busy doing this, we realized a couple of things that, you look at that BOQ, your fee as an engineer is very small compared to the durable goods that you're buying and you're supplying. And you also don't have points of differentiation. That's the other point that somebody was making. You're selling a pipe, somebody else sells a pipe as well. You will never be able to compete with an OEM. So in 2018, we decided, bugger that. We are going to be the OEM. We will do this. A couple of people thought we were mad because there weren't any black companies in that space. And many companies that were in that space weren't succeeding. They were failing. But we decided in 2018 that it was the right time to take that step. Because it was clear that if we didn't take that step, our business was going to remain small, local, and irrelevant. And I was going to end up competing with my colleagues in this room. And that's not really what we want. Actually, what we want is for us to be working together, competing with some guy in Beijing or some guy in Mumbai. That's the kind of mentality that I think we need to adopt just as a country and as a continent to win ultimately. So we started producing pipes in 2018. Now, when we built the business, there were a number of things that needed to be put in place in order to give us the scale that we needed in order for us to achieve our long-term objectives. One, we needed to comply with local standards, okay, which is the SABS and so on and so forth. But at that stage, we realized that the South African market, perhaps, there is market, but is it big enough to sustain a really, really big business? Our sense was no. So immediately, we ensured that on day one, we also get international accreditation for our products. In fact, we got accredited in Germany before we got accredited in South Africa. And that was purely out of efficiency. We put in one accreditation here and one there. Those guys accredited us quicker than the guys locally. So that's step number one. So we made sure that we were trying to build a business that was ready for international audience. And in doing so, we needed to properly understand what the things would be that we would need to put in place in order to be invited to the table. Potentially not win, just to be sitting at the table, because compliance, you're sitting at the table, you're not winning. So that was step one. And our thinking was, if we can win on the big scale, if we can build the kind of scale that we want, then we will start having the economies of scale that will make us competitive, not just locally, but in all the jurisdictions in which we were playing. The second thing that we did was we put very strong systems in place for internal compliance. So we invested in the development of an ERP system to keep track of every single operational measure in the business. Because as you would know, in manufacturing, like what we do, it's all about efficiency. You have to get that efficiency, and the only way you can get that efficiency is to make sure that you run as efficient a business as you can. So we standardized all the processes around the business. And in a very short space of time, we started winning awards. One of the things that happened, I'll tell the story as well. One of the things that happened, we were dealing with a large American-based reseller of polymers. We were buying polymers from the US, and bringing them into South Africa, producing our product. And the Americans were shocked because they didn't think that a South African company, well, we could read between the lines what they meant, but they didn't think a South African company would quite be at a level where it would buy product from them and process it and produce something that is worthwhile. So they actually came, they came to visit us. They came to the factory and they looked around, took us for dinner that evening. And after a few glasses of wine, the guys were like, "Sure, we're so impressed that we didn't realize that you guys could actually could actually do this." And it told you something about the kinds of ingrained attitudes people sometimes have, even if they're not necessarily meaning bad. What we then did in 2020, at the height of COVID, you will recall we went into lockdown and government was telling us that there's a shortage of PPE, and the core reason for the shortage of PPE was the medical filters that were very expensive, and the Chinese were holding back, different countries were holding back, including different countries were. America put in legislation to hold back, China did the same, Germany did the same, many countries did that. We immediately then had a national effort to try and get the American government to release some stock out of America, to try to get the Chinese government to release some stock. I'm saying at a government level, that's what our government did. What we did, our engineering team, we said, this filter is produced from polypropylene. We know how to process polyethylene. How about we try and we produce this filter? Within 3 months of going down that road, we had cracked the production of medical filters, something that 3 months prior to that we had no idea about. But because we had set up our business for scalability and an international audience, we were able to seize the moment and produce that filter that was in very high need at the time. And on the back of that, we built a medical business. That was the team prior to COVID, where our focus was mostly on engineering as well as the production of pipes. And the story that I was telling is this. So this is in 2020, after hard lockdown, we got back to work and we produced that medical filter. What's interesting about that is, as far as I'm aware, so I could be proven wrong, but as far as I'm aware, we were the first company outside China to produce that product on an industrial scale at the height of COVID. I'll make a slightly different point as well. My team is 99% black. All of us went to government schools, so there's nothing special there. There really isn't anything special. I think where we went right is we focused very much on building a business that is capable of competing on the global stage. I have no interest in competing, at least not sustainably, with my fellow South Africans. My strategy is to work with my South Africans so that we can beat people from the outside. So, and we did it, we did it. Of course, and then on the back of that, we built those facilities and that team. And as you would know, in the medical space, it's very important to adhere to proper standards. So the entire model behind the business is to say, can we build a business such that, one, your mindset is an international mindset, and you build your processes and systems such that all these new things that you want to build, you are easily able to then plug them into your system. And that way you get to your objectives a lot sooner. At least that's what happened with us. We run 2 laboratories, one mechanical laboratory, and we run 1 medical laboratory. And the task of these laboratories is to ensure compliance with local and international standards. Maybe another story worth telling, you'll see there's a number of young ladies in there. All of those ladies have BSc degrees in chemistry, geology, and so on and so forth. But they have one thing in common. All of them were working in Edcon, folding clothes, call centers, and so on and so forth. We took them out of those environments and we put them in laboratories. And they absolutely shocked us with how they transformed from people who maybe had the degree but were not adequately trained to people who were absolutely able to compete with anybody anywhere in the world. What then subsequently happened is our people get poached. But I don't mind, because then we become a bit of a training ground for our people, and we take that quite seriously. And all of that is based on the frameworks that we have put in place. We're able to take somebody, you need to have some level of training, but we're able to take you, put you into our environment, into a system, a process that works, and then at the end of it, we get real performance out of the guys. So we do contract manufacturing for a number of local and international brands. In fact, in the medical side of our business, 80% of the business that we do is not in South Africa. We do business in Europe, the rest of Africa, and the Americas. In South Africa, we do very, very, very limited business. So that red box there at the corner there, that's a German company worth. We produce and package under their brand for them. So it's our product, but we put their branding on it, and then they on-sell it. So yeah, and this is the crux of it. Our environment, we've got about 90% no paper. And again, we did that very deliberately because we were saying to ourselves, if we were going to build the kind of business we hope to be one day, we then need to not just comply, but take it to another level. Because what that compliance actually does, I think sometimes we think of compliance as an external thing. I have to comply with regulation. I think what I'm trying to characterize is that compliance is also an internal thing, where you develop your own set of standards that are based on what you do. And those things, if you do them well, they make you hard to beat. So to give an example of what we did with our ERP system, we were the first company in the South African industry, in our pipe industry, to implement a system like this. And we started doing well with exports. We didn't understand why we were doing so well. It turned out that our customers wanted to buy from us because we were able to produce the documentation quicker than the next guy. So all our competitors were going through a manual process. It would take them a week to produce documentation required to export their product. Meanwhile, for us, it was a click of a button. It sounds so simple. It sounds so trivial. But a customer sitting on the other side wanting product, wanting to take it across the border, that difference of 1 week has huge implications. And this is the other thing about a business model. A business model is something that will make you very difficult to compete with, very hard to beat. And it's worth spending enough time thinking about what those things are that will make you very, very difficult to beat. Not just locally, but internationally as well. I think just in broad terms, if you think about it, South Africa is a small country. So to give you a sense, a company that does what I do in America turns over $10 billion a year, right? So I don't. But what I'm saying is, if you think about how then we remain relevant and competitive in an environment where somebody can make $10 billion. So you have to find those areas, those gold nuggets that you can chew on that nobody else will see, that will make you very, very difficult to compete with. So, in thinking about this topic, as I said, I tried for my conversation not to sound like I know how to do it, and I've got declarative final knowledge on it. My thinking was to share what I've learned, just to maybe try and summarize my story and the key lessons that I've learned in what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years. I think you have to know your market. You have to be clear what your market wants and what your market does not want. In our case, as I said, we make polyethylene pipes. If you look at the numbers, you'll see that the global demand for polyethylene for the last 15 years has exceeded both global GDP and global population. It tells you something, that plastic drives industry. So if we wanted to be taken seriously and be a meaningful player in industry, that's the kind of space we needed to be in. That was the kind of space that was going to give us global relevance. In that space, what are your order qualifiers? In other words, what is it that you need to be doing to be invited to the table? But more importantly, what are the order winners? How are you going to win? And unfortunately, you have to win on price as well. So you have to design your business such that you produce a quality product. It has to be top quality. But man, in the real world, you have to be well priced. Because some guy sitting in London doesn't care about your status. He cares about what it is that you're going to give them and what value he's going to derive from it. I understand that businesses evolve over the different stages. I understand that. But I'm just suggesting that it is worth thinking, even at the early stage of your business, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, where you're going to be and why are you going to remain relevant in that time. Every opportunity I get to speak with people, I insist on this. We have to build our businesses for an international audience. We don't have a choice. Our economy is just too small, and the opportunities only in South Africa are too little, and we're going to end up trying to fight over crumbs. The only way for us not to fight over crumbs is to have an international audience in mind. And having an international audience in mind will pull you and your thinking in a very different direction to when you think you're playing at a local level. As I said, there's nothing special about me or my team. We're all, from Ekasi and whatnot. But I think what we try to do is we try very hard to make a difference, but to also, show that it actually can be done with the right frameworks. You need to have systems in your business, systems that drive your internal standards. You cannot run your business on Excel. If you send me a quotation on Excel, I don't take you seriously. I'll delete your email. If you send me a presentation where your formatting is bad, I'll delete it. If one picture doesn't look like the next picture, then I say, you don't pay attention to detail. So those things matter. So you have to create systems, you have to create standards that allow you, at least that allow the next person not to think, this is just a small business, to start thinking that, maybe this is it's an interesting business. But also what those systems do is they make it easier for you to scale and grow. Because every day when you work on systems, you do continuous improvement. After 2 years of continuous improvement, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to come in to that space and compete with you if you've spent 2 years continuously improving the processes and standards in your organization. And then finally, I think it's good to be flexible and never let a good crisis go to waste. During COVID, when a lot of businesses were dying, my business doubled, and I do zero business with the government. So I'm very proud of that. And that was based on us thinking out of the box in terms of saying, but who says that country can do it and we can't? We will actually bloody do it, and we'll be good at it. And you know what? We'll beat them. And you know what? We'll eat their lunch. For a change, they will look up to us. And that's what we did. And that's why the bulk of that product we export. So I think, for me, that's what I would try to summarize as my story and the lessons that I've learned over the years. Thank you.
Stay on stage.
Kgomotso, thank you so much. You can just go that side. I've got a few questions for you from some of our guests that are joining us virtually. So Ricardo wanted to know, are you now buying polymers from Sasol?
I do.
Cool. And then Patrick wants to know, looking at the current climate, i.e. the Russia-Ukraine issue,
Yes.
What has that impact been on your business in terms of sales projections since your business is international? He also specifically wanting to know what kind of risk do you take on being an international supplier?
Yeah. So I think this is another very interesting one. Because we've been, you've seen our advertising, we advertise in China and all over the world. And part of the reason we advertise in China, I'm going to answer that question, is because a lot of the mines in Africa are operated by Chinese companies. So that's how they get to know about us. They see us in their home language, in their country. They go, oh, wow, this can be done in Africa. And then they give us a call. In doing that, we've managed to build an international audience that now, given the crisis that's happening between Ukraine and Russia, are coming back to us to say, listen, Konje, you did this for us last year. Can you consider doing this for us now, given what is happening? Because companies have to now rethink, global companies have to rethink the supply chains. So the conversations are becoming more and more interesting as companies are trying to diversify their supply chains. What risk do I take?
Yeah. So the kind of business risk that you take on and that you're exposed to being an international supplier?
I don't take any risk that I can't insure.
Cool, that's great. Okay, cool. And the last one was just Lebogang saying you're doing fantastic work. Are there any questions from anyone in the room? Gentleman there at the back, can we get a microphone there? And then the lady, sorry, sir, can you also then bring the mic to the lady at the table here in the middle? No, we'll start with you, sir, but then, just so he knows where to go afterwards.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. It's kind of motivating most of us. My question to you is, I just saw that your company is an ISO-compliant company.
Yes.
While you were doing your presentation. But there you stated that you are also meeting ISO 9001 requirements. So I'm not sure if I'm asking from a relevant person, because you might find that we have a quality manager that perhaps can answer to that. But my first question is it ISO 9001 2008 or the one that just been reviewed, which is ISO 9001 2015? And then on top of that, you made mention of the fact that you tried by all means to reduce using too much paperwork. I don't know by what percentage you did mention. But when you're getting audited by the accredited bodies, they require that whatever in terms of document control, whatever you have on soft copy, you must have on hard copy as well. So how do you balance that? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's ISO 9001 2015, as well as ISO 13485, ISO 4427. We comply with a lot of ISOs. I think on last count it was 8 or 9 different ISOs that we comply to. You're quite right, you need source documents. But what we do is we keep all the original documents that ISO requires. We scan them and keep them on our system and then file those documents away. What I'm referring to as our general modus operandi in the business, we try to limit the use of paper, not because we want to be environmental. Yes, it's a benefit that we get, but out of doing that, you get unimaginable business intelligence that tells you what's happening in your business so that you can drive those efficiencies that I was talking about.
Fantastic. Can we get the question from the lady at the table here in the middle, who's sitting in the middle of the 3 ladies? Thanks.
Hi, my name is Anastasia from Ashwaban Advisory Services. Your story is very inspirational. I like to meet people that actually swim against the current, and get into industries that people think cannot be entered into. I have a competition law background, and I want to know what were your barriers to entry into the space, and how did you deal with that, and does that determine also how you do your pricing?
Yeah. I mean, you're asking some very important questions. I'll start with your sentiment. If there's anything that I do, if there's anything that I will take as a success out of today, is if I can convince my people to move into those spaces that we think are non-traditional, have no representation, right? I think it is crucial that we do that. Otherwise, we will never own the means of production. And if you never own the means of production, you will be a slave, fundamentally, because the one that produces the product can exploit you. They can decide, it's COVID, I'm charging you this much, and you can't respond. So for me, I see it as a key fundamental issue that we need to deal with, just broadly, broadly speaking. Your question of barriers to entry, there are many. Many barriers to entry, and the biggest one, obviously, is access to capital. Right, it's very difficult to get into a space that's capital intensive when you don't have money. But the second one is all of these industries are established. All the players have mature, established, vested relationships. And I don't think necessarily the right way to deal with those relationships is with competition law, because I do think that if we prohibit our companies from becoming big, by definition, we're prohibiting them from getting economies of scale to compete on the global scale. So we almost need to rethink how we think about competition law in South Africa. We must not make it a barrier for our companies to be global behemoths, because if we do that, we will not win. I forgot the other question, the other part.
How does that influence your pricing?
Yeah, so you have to get your pricing from efficiencies. Now, it goes back to that issue of business model, right? So there's two companies.
Sorry, Kgomotso, I do want to ask you just to be very short on that point, because
Okay.
one of our next panelists has a time constraint.
Okay.
But you can finish up that sentence.
Just drive efficiencies.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kgomotso. You were amazing. Thank you so much. Just give him a round of applause. You know, if you put a time demand to it, it's just a quick answer. Just get to efficiencies. Okay, I know people have questions, so I'm going to invite back up to the stage Lekola, and I'm also going to ask Ujabulile Ratsibo to join him. She is the Head of Enterprise and Supply Development here at Sasol. I've seen your questions here on the app. I think maybe if we can get two people to help us with the mic as Ujabulile and Lekola make their way up to the stage, and we will then do our Q&A. And if you are going to ask questions in the room, I ask that you please be very concise, just that we can get through as many questions as possible before Mr. Lekola needs to leave us, because he's got a 4 o'clock appointment, so we are cutting it fine in his diary. But thank you so much for coming back downstairs to join us for this. Please give them both a round of applause.